Hi, this is Bert, and thanks for joining us for the Season Gaming Bitcast. I'm here joined with Ainsley Bowden, my friend and colleague.
Good morning.
Today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently than our normal format. After the big E3 conference, we usually try to have a follow-up of what we liked, what we didn't like. So we're going to be kind of going away from our normal format of news, developer news, and all the stuff we're collecting, and even our season reflections are going to take a break for this week. So this week we're going to talk mainly about what we liked, what we didn't like from E3. We've had three bitcasts in a row that have kind of talked about E3, so this will kind of close out E3 for the most part. We might touch on it here and there, but this will be kind of a closeout of E3. But before we get started from E3, we had some big news come this week from a developer that a lot of people are pretty excited about, and it's a big win for the gamers. IOI Interactive is officially an independent studio. They did leave from Square Enix. If you guys remember the Hitman series, it's kind of a big win for us. A lot of people loved it. It is kind of a beloved series in general, but the most recent one did get a lot of new gamers. So this is kind of a big win for them. They have the full rights to the Hitman series, so hopefully we'll be seeing something new from them in the near future following that up, if not other franchise that they worked with. What are your thoughts on that, Ainsley? Kind of a big win for us.
Yeah, there was questions whether or not that IO Interactive was going to actually retain the rights, because we've seen some companies before, bigger publishers like Square Enix, hold on to the rights to a series, and then that developer kind of gets left out in the cold. So this is good. They, as you said, they announced yesterday they were pretty excited about being officially independent, and hopefully, we'll still see Hitman 2 next year.
Yeah, they did the kind of the episodic format to Hitman, which ended up being a big choice that ended up being good for us. A lot of people liked the first one. You could kind of test out the first episode. So I'm interested to see if part two or the follow-up is going to have the same episodic stuff. But I love the last one. So for people that were fans of it, this should be a big win for you. We were kind of worried that we weren't going to see any more Hitman with Square Enix kind of not shuttering them up, but pretty much saying that it's not a focus for them at the moment. So good news for everybody. So let's go ahead and move over to our E3 discussion. Just to follow you up and with what we've covered before, we had kind of our predictions, which was episode 2. We had a special edition episode last weekend that was just kind of our quick fire, and we had kind of a contest between the editors. We're going to be giving you those answers on who got the most a little bit more in the future, but with the crazy week that we've had of E3, we're going to kind of go over what we liked, what we didn't like, and we have some questions ahead. So you want to kick us off, Ains, on our questions for this week for E3?
Yeah, so we'll start with EA. EA was the first conference over the weekend, and they showed a few things that were expected and a couple that weren't. So, we touched on Need for Speed in a previous Bitcast, but that was a big highlight of their show was Need for Speed Payback. So they showed a full mission, which was incredibly reminiscent of Fast and Furious, as kind of was rumored when we first saw the game. And then we also saw some of the customization that they're putting in the game in terms of what you can find and how you can really kind of suit vehicles up, which is another focus of the title. So, I mean, as I said before, I haven't been a huge fan of Need for Speed lately. There were some of the titles that I loved over the years. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. I'm not a huge fan of the Fast and Furious movies either, so I don't know if I'm going to be the right audience for the whole kind of overly dramatic action scenes, in this Need for Speed. That said, I did like in the mission when they were driving and they were kind of ramming the vehicles off the road and it did the slow motion crashes, almost reminiscent of Burnout, right? So I thought that was pretty cool, and you could probably be a lot of fun if you were just playing with that. But like I said before, with titles like Horizon 3 out there, which is just amazing open world, and then serious titles like Motorsport and Project Cars, I don't know if this is going to be one that I necessarily get into.
Yeah, we'll start with Need for Speed. I'll follow up on that really quick. So I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of over all of the Need for Speed type games, even though that movie franchise is still doing amazing worldwide. I'm kind of over it when it comes to games. We've seen kind of nothing but that from Need for Speed games for the past few series. If they have some kind of fun mechanics and stuff while racing, maybe I'll pick it up, but I have a feeling this will be a bargain bin game for me. However, I do know that the Need for Speed series is sold pretty well, so I'm assuming that series, that group of gamers will still pick it up. One thing I do want to mention about the E3 EA conference that I didn't like already was the way they opened up. They had that kind of cheesy EA Sports Madden opening where they came out with the drums and everybody was wearing the Tom Brady jerseys, which was great to start out with. But when you follow it up with kind of the cheesy intro, I was not a fan of it. I actually would give E3 EA one of the lamest this year, so I was not a big fan of most of it. But there was some positive stuff, and I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The opening was kind of silly. Especially being the first conference, everyone's excited about E3 and, ready to go. And we're watching this and it's like, this is not how you really want to kick this off. But, so looking at more positive things. So we'll kind of go game by game here, I think. So, one of the new things that no one expected was an EA original. So the executive VP for EA there touched on EA Originals, their program to, kind of support some more independent developers or smaller developers on getting published under the EA banner. And they showed a game called A Way Out, which is the next game from the gentleman who made Brothers of, what is it, A Tale of Two Sons, I believe.
Yep, that would be it.
Okay, so, co-op game where you can kind of control two characters at the same time from two different perspectives. And this got a lot of press. It looked really impressive. The story and Brothers was kind of touching, so there's an expectation here that it'll be the same in this game. And I thought it looked pretty cool. Maybe one that I definitely get into. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really cool co-op. The when the developer came out and kind of the guy, the spokesperson for it, was talking more about couch co-op and how much fun that could be. We always talk about how couch co-op's been kind of gone for maybe even the last 2 generations of gaming. There's been a few of them that are fun. It looks really cool. I did hear him say online co-op a couple times during that conference, but at the same time, it came back to couch co-op only. So I think we need some clarity on exactly what you're going to get from the online co-op. However, the art style of that game and the fact that you can kind of see 2 different situations going on and what's going on around you looked really cool. So I hope that ends up being good and it doesn't end up being limited to people now moving on to the online only co-op. And wanting to have more of that versus the couch co-op. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm kind of interested to see how the audience and we as consumers respond to it.
Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting. But yeah, that looks good. Then they kind of got into some of their bigger titles, right? The known ones. So the biggest I would think this year, obviously, is Star Wars Battlefront 2. We touched on this before, right? Wasn't a huge fan of Battlefront 1. I thought it was a little shallow. Didn't have a lot of content. And I didn't really do too much with it. I've been looking forward to this one, and I got to say, this looks just simply incredible. We're at the point now, especially on the higher level consoles, higher end PCs, where graphics are just unreal, and this definitely showed it. So it looks like Battlefield 1 with the Battlefront 2 skin on it, meaning that it's huge, large scale battles, vehicles, just a whole lot going on. We saw some of the heroes in Darth Maul and Rey, and what else? Something I'm forgetting here. Oh, the class structure, how you can kind of modify your class and level that up. So this just I thought it looks fantastic.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And I'm with you with the Battlefront thing. I think we played it. I think we all said it looked cool. But when it came down to longevity of Battlefront 1, we really didn't see ourselves playing that for a long time. But seeing Battlefront 2 play looked just great, and the type of players you could play. I remember the first thing that they opened with was playing as the droids and being able to fight stormtroopers and stuff, and the type of ships you could fly around and kill with. It looked like a Battlefield 1 battle going on, but in the Star Wars universe, which people are just going to love. And I just hope that that each class has the depth that you could do a lot of things with, not just constant leveling up with maybe a gun scope or something, but a lot more to it. It looks awesome. And we'll see what else they bring us. One thing that was really cool about that is the fact that they were constantly saying free content coming after you buy the game. So hopefully that means that they're doing away with the big season pass stuff that EA has been kind of notorious for. But we'll see. It looks awesome. I can't wait for it either. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I had forgot. But yeah, they did say that they're going to keep the player base together. So I mean that pretty much insinuates that the season pass is going away. So that's great news. We've been talking about that for a long time now. So we just need Call of Duty to follow suit, and we may be in good shape. So Battlefield 1, since we kind of mentioned it, they touched on that as well. They've got what is it, Novell Nights coming in June, which is going to be like a night version of the maps, which looks actually kind of interesting. It sounds simple, but when you think about how large those battles are and the type of weaponry you're using that could really make things interesting. But the big expansion is coming later this year, called In the Name of the Czar, and that's going to add what they say 6 maps actually instead of 4 this time. I think it's
yeah, it's going to be bigger, and there's kind of a bigger push to the new units that are coming with it, with the all-women's platoon that's in the game as well. I think a lot of people were excited when that was mentioned, so a lot of new content coming that looks really good.
Yeah, the Women's Battalion of Death, right? So
yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. So that's good stuff as well. But I mean, Battlefield will carry on for years as it usually does, right? But they do a good job with the expansions there. The expansions really having some meaty content, so that's good. So they touched on all their sports titles as usual, right? And I know you and I really don't get too heavy into these, but Madden for the first time will have a story mode similar to what FIFA started last year. And it looked kind of interesting, right? It looked like you're kind of a kid in a Southern football program that, will hopefully kind of play through that story and eventually make the pros. So I don't know if that's something that sports games, it seems like EA is trying to push that angle with sports games where it actually has a story mode that you can play through to add some variety to how sports games are played. I don't know. I think it's a pretty cool concept. I don't really know how you add meaningful single player content to sports games if you don't do something like this. So I kind of applaud them for trying something new. But I'm not a big Madden fan, but I would imagine for fans that could be fun to play through.
Yeah, the sports games in general, I've kind of moved away from with all the other type of stuff that exists. However, to your point, I think that the developers have to do that to keep people tuned in. You can't just have a new skin or a new franchise mode that adds, buying hot dogs at the stands now or something. You have to kind of have something to evolve from. So I think it looks cool. I'm glad EA is doing more with their Madden franchise instead of keeping it still, since they have the license and prevent anybody else from making an NFL game. But we'll see more. And as we kind of like to play the NHL games, some of that look kind of cool just out front. So.
Yeah, and as a hockey fan, they showed Madden, they showed FIFA, they showed NBA Live, they didn't show NHL. So that annoyed me a little bit, but I understand it is what it is. The audience for that game is a lot smaller than the other one. So on FIFA, similar thing. They're continuing that single player campaign like story, so the journey continues, what they're calling it. And then with NBA Live, they're doing some unique things as well, including like a 5-on-5 outdoor basketball. So they're kind of including not necessarily NBA Street, but kind of a more less serious mode in that game as well. So we'll see how that does. But we'll move on to the huge announcement from EA. They only gave the teaser for it, and then they let Microsoft unveil it fully the following day. But we got to see Anthem for the first time. So this is the game that BioWare has been working on for a few years now, the team that made the original Mass Effect trilogy. And we'll talk more about this. But this is one that's created, if not the most hype out of E3, it's definitely up there. So, like I said, we'll touch on that with Microsoft stuff. But that was one that I was anxious to see, and looks stunning.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one thing to touch on the EA Sports games before I talk about Anthem is that they did show off the Switch FIFA, which people have been kind of interested to see if it's even near what the other console power stuff is. And when they were showing people demoing it at E3, they were saying it looks exactly the same. However, I don't know if it's side by side going to be the same, but they said it's really playable. You have everything you need from it, so that's kind of cool from Switch. Anthem, from the teaser trailer that they showed, that they mentioned they would talk more about at Microsoft, I was blown away right there. And like I said, we'll talk more, or like you said, we'll talk more about it when we talk about Microsoft. But it was kind of a cool, I don't know if you'd consider it a mic drop moment, but it was a cool exit out of the EA conference that I felt was overall pretty poor.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning FIFA on the Switch too. I had forgot about that. So if I recall correctly, I have been following that a little bit. So it is FIFA 18. It does have Ultimate Team, which is one of the most liked features of the modern EA games. So that's good news. But it is not running on the Frostbite engine like the PS4 and Xbox One version. So we'll see how that turns out. I hope it's good. As we've kind of said all along, is that being able to play any of these games, any of the modern console games on the go with the Switch is just awesome. So still a big win, I think. So do we want to move to Microsoft? They were next.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
let's do it. Let's get ready for all the hate comments we're probably going to get on it. So I might as well prepare ourselves.
So Microsoft, was next on Sunday, and they were one of the most anticipated conferences simply because they're unveiling new hardware, right? And so anytime there's a new hardware unveil, they get a lot of focus. So we now know Scorpio, which we were all wrong about on the name and the date. We didn't do too good there, but Xbox One X, X1X is, what a lot of people are calling it, but I'm kind of indifferent on the name. Don't love it, don't hate it. It doesn't really matter to me. But coming out November 7th at $499. So kind of the price that we assumed, right, Bird? I think a lot of people assume $499. A lot of us were wishing for $399, but we're also realistic. There's just too much technology, too much power in that box to realistically put it on the market at $399. So they opened with it. They got it out right in front of everyone. They had the lead engineer come out and talk about it briefly, and then they just went into games and games and games and games. They showed more games at their conference than any other conference by far. In fact, I think they showed something like double what Sony showed, 42 games in total, if I recall. So I was really, really impressed as someone who was going to get Scorpio or Xbox One X no matter what, just because I buy all new hardware. The price doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I'm probably going to write an editorial on why I think it's still a bargain, and I don't understand why some people are surprised or outraged at $499. But they to me, they really showed why this console was something special and what it would mean to the games that we'll touch on shortly here. What do you think of the X?
Yeah, so I'm really excited for it. I'm also going to buy. We both buy all hardware for all consoles and all makers, so we're excited about that. I want to touch really quick on Microsoft's presentation. I thought overall was one of the best from a presentation standpoint. So they came out, they had the massive 4K screen behind them. They showed a ton of content, and the overall layout was really sleek to me. We'll kind of touch on the other conferences and how their performance as far as layout was. From the big names, I thought it was the best one. Just how all the colors were looking really good, the big screen. They didn't have as many technical issues, or if any, compared to some of the other ones. So I thought that was really good for starting. The other thing you mentioned is the cost. I really don't understand people's hate or mention about the cost. I mean, there are video cards for PC that costs more than the entire console that comes with a controller and ready to plug and play with your existing Xbox consoles. There are other things that are just kind of silly. A lot of people on social media were talking about, well, your phone that you're complaining about on Twitter or Facebook or whatever about the cost over $300 more than the actual console that you're talking about. So I'm not going to respond to too much of the fanboy comments, whether it be from Nintendo or Sony or anything. I'm just going to say it's kind of silly to make a big deal out of hardware. From a hardware perspective, if you're looking only at hardware and nothing else, $500 is a bargain altogether for that console. From the negative side of where are the games and everything, I really don't have much to say about that. If you're a Sony guy, you're going to be sticking with your titles and you're going to find some negativity from what's coming out. However, just keep in mind that the majority of software that's sold for both consoles are cross-platform games. So before you start, talking about all the exclusives or lack of exclusives that one console has over the other, keep in mind that most consoles don't really outsell their cross-platform games with exclusives. So in general, but as you mentioned, you're going to write an article as to why it's worth the $500, and I'm sure you'll touch on some of the game stuff. So overall, things were great. I guess we can start talking about the exclusives that were mentioned from Microsoft. And a lot of people were also complaining about the term timed exclusive or console launch exclusive that was mentioned at Microsoft. So let's kind of talk about the official exclusives that are Microsoft. So the first one's Forza Motorsport 7. You have Minecraft that is going to get the event, which I guess is technically an exclusive, and it is a Microsoft-owned property. So that's to an extent exclusive, but not really. You have Crackdown 3 that was mentioned and shown, and that did get a launch that we'll talk about that a little bit later. Sea of Thieves and State of Decay 2. Those are your Microsoft exclusives that are only coming to the Microsoft console when it comes to home console games.
Yeah, so, man, Trying to think on what to touch on first there. So yeah, we won't write an editorial about the price in the comments about that. Not going to worry about that. In terms of the exclusive, so let's go one by one. So Crackdown 3, just first to mind, it's going to launch day and date with the console. I think that is quite obviously a smart play on Microsoft's part. You know, Crackdown is a franchise that's remembered fondly by Xbox players, but not necessarily the general population, and it hasn't been around for a while. So how better to kind of get it in front of people than to say, oh, you're buying a fancy new Xbox One X, here's Crackdown 3 on the same day and date. So they did get a little flack for showing the single player at the conference, which I too kind of felt weird. You know, they opened with Terry Crews, which I thought was hilarious, and they have confirmed that he's a playable character in the game, so that's even more funny. But yeah, they showed this kind of almost like comic book style mashup of gameplay, and I thought it looked really good. But you know, the big thing around Crackdown 3 was the destruction, right? You being able to take entire buildings down and cities down and everything, and they didn't really show any of that. So Sumo Digital and the developer on the game kind of came out and said that they were showing the single player content in the main conference, and they would show some multiplayer the rest of E3, and they did. There's been some articles highlighting the multiplayer of the game and how all the destruction and the leveling of buildings and stuff is still in it, and it looks I don't know, it looks really impressive. I don't think it's simply because of the art direction and the style of the game, I don't think it's a showcase title for the Xbox One X. But I think it's going to be one of those games that's just so much fun to play that, it doesn't have to be state of the arts graphics wise. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'll definitely be picking that up with my X on November 7th.
Yeah, Crackdown looked really cool. There was, as you'd imagine, a lot of hate on it because they only showed the single player. And the game has had kind of a tumultuous, development time. So I was wanting to see more about the destruction as well. I can't remember, but have they mentioned how many players it is? Is it 5-on-5, 6-on-6? Has it been mentioned?
No, and I was looking to see that too because of our trivia question we did, but no, I didn't see that either. Okay. I know in the single player campaign they showed like 4 agents together, so I don't know if that's saying there's co-op up to 4 players in the single player as well. I don't know. If they did talk about it, I missed it. I haven't seen.
Okay. Yeah, it looked really cool. So I will probably be picking it up. Probably wanting to hear a little bit more about what the game offers in general. I'm not just buy it no matter what type, and I know you're not either. So I think we want to hear a little bit more about what the game has and what's coming with it. So it looks really cool so far. I did enjoy the first one a lot. I didn't play the second one as much as the first. So hopefully we'll see kind of a mishmash of both and new things added for 3.
Yeah, agreed. So Forza Motorsport 7, that was kind of interesting, right? I know, we're car guys, so we may have appreciated it more than others, but it was kind of interesting to see Dan Greenawalt unveil the new GT2 RS on stage for the first time to the world. So that was, he highlighted it, but I can imagine some game only guys being like, what the hell was that? So, but I thought it was great, especially as a Porsche fan. So it was cool to see that the GT2 RS, the new one, the game looks absolutely incredible, which is kind of what we all expected, right? Forza 6 was beautiful. Horizon 3 is beautiful. And knowing that they were going to be putting 7 out in native 4K at 60 frames, it didn't disappoint at all. So I've already read a ton of comments on people online saying it was, one of the most beautiful games by far at the show. It won a ton of awards. And I know, as usual, Microsoft gets a lot of flack for having Forza every year, which, again, as a car guy and a racing fan, I don't really understand. Racing games are popular. I think it was Turn 10 mentioned they have something like 6 million players monthly, that log into a Forza game to play. And it's, considered by many to be the best racing franchise. So I don't know. I think it's great. I'm looking forward to it. Porsche is included from the start now, which is fantastic. It's going to have over 700 cars. Like we said, it's native 4K, 60 frames, and it's coming out October 3rd before the X. So what they said is you can buy it on October 3rd, play it on your standard Xbox One, and then on November 7th, if you're buying the X, you'll have a free update, which will, give you all the 4K assets and everything else. But they talked a little bit about a new career progression mode, and they're going to be revealing some more details later in the year. But we'll see what that is. But the dynamic weather and the new AI and all that just looked awesome. So. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I was like, I'm taking a break from Forza, the Motorsport series, not the Horizon series, because it's a lot of the same and whatever. Then I saw it play, and I was like, damn, I'm buying that day one. So, and then one thing I want to touch on regarding Porsche and why it's important and why it was a big deal to have the Porsche GT2 RS revealed and mentioned at the conference. So, for people that are unaware, EA had a license on Porsche to where you weren't allowed to have it in your game unless you got permission from them. And then most of the time, EA kind of held it back from most developers, including the Forza series and the Gran Turismo series. So if you've wondered why you haven't been able to race Porsches in either one of those, that's why. Well, that whole relationship did end. I believe it was in 2016 between EA and Porsche. And now you're seeing Porsche around other games. You saw it already released in Project Cars. And the big deal here is Microsoft / Turn 10 has a relationship with Porsche now. It's not an exclusive relationship, but they are getting some extra abilities to do that. And then in previous news, they also mentioned that Forza Motorsport 7 is going to have kind of some professional racers from a video game perspective that are going to have kind of a Porsche experience different from the rest of them. So it's a big deal for people that have been looking to play Porsche and other games besides Need for Speeds. So for people that are like, I didn't care, you're kind of missing the big deal that happened in that unveil. So we're really excited. Before we had to kind of buy the expansions later on, way after the game released, and it was like for a $20 price tag. Now it's coming with the game on launch, and you and I couldn't be more excited for everybody else. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are excited here.
Yeah, and one thing just to add to that too is Dan Greenewalt mentioned, I saw an interview after the conference, and he mentioned that for the first time in history, this weekend at the running of Le Mans, they were having a e-sport class within the race that was officially sanctioned, meaning that they were going to run an online race in Forza Motorsport 7 with some of the professional kind of, pro players of that game, and it was going to actually be a sanctioned race. So that's really crazy if you think about it. We have a video game race that is being looked at as a real race as far as the standings is concerned. So I need to do some more research in that. I had never heard that before, but I found that just fascinating. So
yeah, one thing I want to mention on that real quick, and so to kind of give you guys an idea how far gaming has come. So Nissan, they do have two different racers that are in real racing that came from the GT Academy, and that's from the Gran Turismo Academy. So years ago, they were playing Gran Turismo in their living room, own room, or whatever, and now they're racing real cars. So what they've mentioned is that a lot of the reaction times and stuff that you get from gaming in these simulator type games are being translated really well into the real world. So I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more of this, and a lot more people are going to pay more attention to it. So I'm sure we'll see more of it. So that's kind of crazy, but cool news.
Yeah, no doubt. Another exclusive you're talking about was State of Decay 2. So State of Decay was a pretty big hit for the Xbox 360. People loved it. It was a little rough around the edges, but it definitely has a core following that loved that game. So I didn't really play it too much, only briefly, so I can't, not the expert to talk about it. But State of Decay 2, from everything I've heard of those fans, looks excellent. It looks to be a much kind of larger scale game than the first. And what they really like about it is it kind of mimics reality in the sense that you can build your camp and you have to go out and manage resources. And those resources are finite. They don't kind of repopulate. So if you go to a local area and scavenge and you get wood and ammunition and supplies, if you go back there again, even if it's far later in the game, there's nothing there. So you have to kind of go farther and farther. So it's, I don't know, Walking Dead kind of gets associated with everything zombie related nowadays, but it seemed almost like that, like you have to go out as a group and hunt and kind of find things and then build up your civilization. So I don't know if I'm going to be big on this. It seems like a game that'd be a lot more fun with a group of players, and I don't think I have a group of friends that are going to be into the same game. So, but I think for those fans, this one looks really strong. What do you think?
Yeah, I also didn't play a lot of State of Decay 1, so I can't really, claim that I'm super excited for Part 2. And to be honest with you, I'm having a lot of zombie fatigue in general. I'm kind of over the whole zombie rage that a lot of people just loved. When I watched the game, I got a lot of Left 4 Dead vibes from it. However, this one has a lot more of like building up stuff versus just surviving and getting from point to point. So it looks cool. I like the skin of it. I like the way it looks and feels from what I've seen, the more gameplay. If you remember, it was just a teaser trailer that came out about what was coming. So now we got some gameplay and more of a longer trailer. So it looks cool. I'm very open-minded to seeing how it comes out, but I'm not super excited for it as I am for other games. So
Yeah, I'm the same. Sea of Thieves, they did an extended look at. They did kind of a whole treasure hunt mission. I'm a huge fan of Rare. I think this game looks utterly hilarious. I've heard countless people say it's a game that you really have to play to understand why so many people love it. If you talk to, or excuse me, listen to any of the people who have played the game, whether it's in one of the shows or any of the editors at some of the major sites, you hear rave reviews. So I thought it looked really neat. I'm looking forward to it. They finally kind of gave a tentative release date of early next year. So spring 2018 seems to be the hot release time right now. There's a lot more, or many more games we're going to talk about that are supposedly spring 2018. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm hoping we can put a group together to play it because it just looks hilarious. And I think this is going to be one that kind of really builds a following that's going to have a core group of players that just play it, like almost like Destiny, right? Like almost like endlessly. So
yeah, Sea of Thieves look really cool. As we've mentioned in past Bitcasts, it's been kind of one of those things that's been very tight-lipped from people that have actually played the game. So actually being able to see gameplay and stuff looked really cool. It has quite the comedic side of it, and then the narrator kept cracking me up through it a couple times. But with other games coming out this year, from the pirate standpoint, this one definitely has a lot more lightheartedness, and I might have a little bit more fun with this one than I will with others. So I want to see more of it. I want to see the way it kind of releases from a social aspect, and if you have to have a social aspect, it's going to be pretty fun. If you're looking for single player only, I think we'll see more of that coming too. So it looks like a lot of fun. Microsoft has a lot riding on it, so I hope that it releases the way we're expecting it to.
yeah, and then there was one thing we can't forget, and I was sitting here thinking that I know there's a couple other games that are exclusive solely to Xbox One on a console perspective, and I'm wearing the shirt. So Cuphead. Cuphead, I'm really, really excited for. We talked about this last week, so finally have a release date. We were all wrong about it. I believe you were the closest, though. But September 29th, it's coming. There's not much else to say. We've seen this one for a couple years now. Pumped for it. Can't wait for that. And then there was another one as well that I'm trying to remember we were going to touch on, and I can't remember what it was now. Did you say Minecraft?
Yeah, it was the Minecraft 4K thing that they're coming. I believe it was called the Super Duper HD pack. Is that what it was?
It was the Super Duper graphics pack.
Graphics pack. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And we kind of laugh because Minecraft, but I don't know if anyone listening or if you've seen it, but they have a video now that shows the difference between your standard Minecraft and the Super Duper graphics pack, and I was even amazed. So it still looks like Minecraft, but the detail and the shadowing and the lighting and the blocks themselves, even the grass and everything, looks really, really impressive. The water looks amazing. So I was kind of amazed to see that they kept Minecraft style, but really sharpened it up in a lot of ways. So if you haven't seen that, go take a look. There's a lot of articles and videos you can see to cover that. The other one we didn't touch on was Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Yep.
So Wisps. It's a pain in the ass to say. The Ori and the Blind Forest I loved. I 100%ed it, or almost 100%ed it. Great game. Challenging, beautiful, great soundtrack. This one touched a lot of people in the sense of the trailer. Like, a lot of people were saying, wow, this was pretty emotional in the sense that they opened with the gentleman playing piano and led into this, and it absolutely gorgeous trailer. So I can only imagine what this is going to look like on the Xbox One X, and I'm definitely a day one buyer of that game as well. So thoughts on those other kind of smaller exclusives?
Yeah, so speaking of day one, Cuphead, you touched on it. There's not even a second thought on that one for me. It looks awesome. I can't wait for it. It can't get here soon enough. Minecraft, I don't understand it. I don't understand. I've mentioned it numerous times on not necessarily being an overrated game or anything. I just don't understand the hype behind it and how people can just play that nonstop. But people love it. And so, good for them. This is going to be cool for them to kind of see this in true 4K. And we'll kind of see it played out and other things coming from it. Yeah, Ori, I loved. It's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen when it comes to colors. So it's got so many different colors, and the color palette used in general is really cool. If they take advantage of the 4K HDR modes, people are just going to have their jaws drop when they watch this gameplay. So we didn't get to see much of the gameplay from the trailer at all. We just saw kind of the world. However, if you remember Ori 1, that is kind of the gameplay. What you see from the trailer is what you kind of jump around with from a side-scrolling platformer. So it looks really cool. Some other games that haven't been really confirmed as a exclusive from it will only be on Microsoft that I was kind of blown away from the smaller titles is The Last Night. I think we got probably a 1:30 trailer from it. It's coming out later. It has kind of an 8-bit style, but with new lighting features and kind of a different take on it. It looked awesome. That was one of my favorite trailers from all of E3, even though it was super short. But that game looked really cool.
Yeah, it did. It looked amazing. It gave kind of, I almost said flashback. So flashback to the game we grew up with many years ago in the Genesis days of Flashback. It had that kind of pixelated side-scrolling look, but the color and the trailer was amazing. Like you said, it kind of caught everyone off guard. Couple other titles that really jumped out to me, and again, I'm forgetting the name of. There was a lot, right? So losing my train of thought. Metro Exodus, at the beginning of the trailer, at the beginning of the conference, excuse me, kind of blew us all away. That looked amazing. Developer 4A Games has said that was actually running on PC, but they highly believe that the exact look that you saw, that kind of 4K native, is possible on Xbox One X. So no reason to believe they can't do that. There was, I think, the biggest announcement in terms of third party that said console launch exclusive. So I believe coming this year to Xbox and then next year, I guess to PlayStation, what have you, is Battlegrounds, right? Battlegrounds is a huge sensation in gaming right now. It's one of the top games on Twitch every day. So that coming to Xbox this year, especially with mixer functionality as well, is going to be, I think, a big win. I'm really looking forward to finally playing that on console. And they also mentioned that will have an Xbox One X update as well to bring it up to, I don't know if they're doing 4K or not, but, to bring it up to really kind of high settings, ultra settings, if you will. And then there was one other I was going to mention. One other thing worth mentioning on Minecraft that we didn't touch on is the fact that they announced, a lot of other features beyond the super duper graphics pack. They announced, worldwide servers, so server crossplay, and community marketplace, so you can kind of create your own stuff and actually sell it in the community for in Minecraft. But the big news out of that, of course, which has made a lot of news lately on sites, is that Minecraft is going to be crossplay between PC, Xbox, the Switch, and tablets. So basically every platform except PlayStation. And so, Sony has kind of tried to come out and say why they're not doing that. It's been a lot of really lip service, and they're catching a lot of heat for not allowing that to be opened up. And it was also confirmed that Rocket League developer Psyonix last year, I believe, said that they could turn on crossplay between the Xbox and PlayStation with the flip of a switch. They could have it running in less than a day, but Sony won't allow them to do it. And so with the Rocket League announcement on the Switch at the conference, they already have confirmed that Xbox, PC, and Switch players will be able to play together on Rocket League as well. So this is a big topic right now. I don't think we want to spend too much time on it, but curious to hear your thoughts on that whole kind of debacle that Sony's facing right now.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the lip service that they gave was that they needed to protect the audience that plays Sony games from whether it be verbal attacks or whatever. I don't think they went into that much detail, but that was kind of the assumption. And they needed to protect the younger crowd as well, if I remember that. The thing that kind of surprises me about that is Sony has always advertised themselves as the console for adults. They have had software that has been for the younger crowd. However, they've always been the mature console for gamers. And I think now what they're trying to position and kind of move themselves from is the console for all gamers, which is very interesting because the other consoles are Microsoft and Nintendo. Nintendo being the main console where the younger crowd has gone traditionally. So I really don't know what it is. Sony has been kind of caught up in some of these non-gamer friendly situations numerous times. If you remember the Fallout mod situation, And the Rocket League conversation that was brought up when Rocket League came to consoles. So I don't know. I don't want to get stuck in a fanboy reaction here. However, the social media was very telling as to who's going to support Sony no matter what they do. But I hope they change their mind on this kind of stuff. People that do have multiple consoles or whatever, and maybe their friends are on a different console, it'd be kind of cool to play with them. And with them being the only one left standing that is not doing that, I'm sure we're going to see other games that they're probably going to have the same stance on. So not very gamer friendly, but it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. And then just to close out, I think, like we said, there's over 40 games shown at Microsoft's conference, and we don't have time to touch on every one of them, but you can go out and find those videos online or on, we cover some of them in our article on the site if you want to check that out as well. But the big one we kind of mentioned earlier was Anthem. So at the close of Microsoft's conference, the EA vice president came back on stage. We got a 6 or 7 minute kind of a small mission look at Anthem, and I got to say, it completely blew me away. The first question when it starts playing is, wow, is that actually the game? The answer was yes. And they kind of highlight, a brief story, and they go and they get in their javelins, they're called, which are kind of like these almost like Iron Man level suits, right? And you think, okay, they're going to hit a loading screen, they're going to load into some mission, and they just jump into this open world and take off, and they go into the water at one point. And you can see they're getting like XP bonuses for discovering new areas, and it's like fully explorable. And, we see some quick combat. We see a quick loot drop, which all looked, again, fantastic. And then they go to do a new mission, and you see like 2 of their buddies just drop in mid-game, just boom, right there. And then there's all 4 of them, full squad, and they take off and it ends. And like I said, this has gotten probably the most press, or right up there, top 3 of E3. And I think personally it's the game that maybe not surprised me the most, but definitely kind of stuck in my mind the most, or blew me away the most of E3 overall. It just looks amazing. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, all the comparisons that I heard after seeing Anthem was, this is what Destiny should have been like. That was one of the big things. And then the other funny one that I heard after it was, is this what the team has been focusing on instead of Mass Effect? So, Andromeda,
yes,
with that release, with Andromeda, kind of having the negative launch that they had due to a number of things, not just the facial animation issue. Anthem just looks mind-blowing. It did mention that this is exactly what it could look like on Xbox One X, and we'll see if that is the final product. I really hope it is, as we see in most of these E3 conferences. It looks amazing when we first see it. It gets a little change, and then later, I don't think we're going to see Ubisoft proportions of a change, but I think we're going to see something very close to what we're seeing now with the newer consoles like the Pro and the One X. So I can't wait for it to come out. We didn't get an official launch date. They said 2018, is that right? Maybe fall 2018 is what we're looking at?
Yeah, I'm guessing fall. They said fiscal year 2019. So, that means anything from April 1st next year through the beginning of 2019. But I think given the size and scope of the game, we're probably looking at fall next year. And just to comment on your comment about the One X. So EA, after the conferences, did come out and confirm that Anthem and Battlefield 1, all the footage that was shown of Battlefield 1, the new expansion, both of those were running at the show on Xbox One X's, not PCs. So that I found that interesting. So that just goes to show you that, the level of graphical fidelity we can expect. And then one thing we forgot to touch on, which I'm a big fan of, I'm sure you are as well, and the crowd went nuts for, because it's been rumored for a long time, is original Xbox backwards compatibility. So, Phil came out and he was talking about backwards compatibility, how well it's been adopted and expanding it. And, then the old kind of boot up, or the original X, came on the screen, and the crowd went nuts. I think you saw half the crowd stand up and cheer. So I think they knew that was going to be a big moment for, Xbox fans. It was. I loved it. They officially showed Crimson Skies and Fusion Frenzy are the only 2 titles they've confirmed so far, but they said there will be more. It's not going to be as big of a program as the 360, just due to the licensing and some things that go on. But I think that's awesome. I mean, we're going back now 16 years. So you go back 2 generations and you'll be able to play all those games on a single platform, or a bunch of those games on a single platform. I think that's great.
Yeah, that library of games, there's a ton of them that are actually really cool, and I think we're seeing more and more of kind of the Phil Spencer change after the changing of the guard at Microsoft with the Xbox, and being able to play some of those games from 16 plus years ago is really really cool. What we even mentioned, I think I've mentioned two Xbox original games on some of my season reflection stuff that I hope we'd be able to play again, and here we are. There's been some questions around the tech and how it works, and if they're going to kind of emulate the same way that the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility is, and it's not the same type of emulation as you would expect. They're literally running an Xbox 360 type console on the X1, so it'd be interesting to see if it's done the same way with Xbox. So I'm looking forward to it. They did state that you'd be able to put your disc in the console, and it would be able to kind of download the same way that the 360 is. So we'll just need to see what kind of games are coming.
Yeah, which is again kind of incredible. I don't think people understand the engineering challenge that is, to do something like that. And really, it's especially for original Xbox games. From a 360 standpoint, it generates sales and does some other things for the companies. But from an original Xbox, a game like Crimson Skies, this is really just a play for the fans, and I love it. I love it. So, like I said, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, there were a bunch of other games shown at the Microsoft conference. Go check them out. But we don't want to spend too much time talking about that. So later on Sunday evening, which was a bizarre time, to be honest with you, was the Bethesda conference. And we're both here in the Central Time Zone, and that represented 11 p.m. And the conference only ended up being like 40 minutes long. So I don't know what happened in terms of scheduling there. I know they were originally supposed to go 2 hours earlier and something happened. So kind of bizarre. And again, they showed some really neat stuff. But, when you're doing a 35-minute conference, 40-minute conference, I'm not sure if it's really worth having your own personal E3 conference for that. But maybe that's a discussion for another day. But they did show some really cool games. They opened with Fallout 4 VR, which we had talked about previously, and Doom VR, which, if you've played Doom like we have, it's an incredibly fast-paced, tense game. I would have to imagine they're kind of dumbing that down a little bit for VR. Otherwise, I don't know. I think everyone would end up throwing up trying to play it. But what do you think about, those games in VR?
Yeah, so I have kind of a weird take on the VR thing, and it's who's the massive audience that's going to buy all these games? So PlayStation VR has not sold that well. It's sold decent, and it's been good. It's doing okay, but it seemed like they spent a lot of time on the VR stuff. And so to start with, Doom in VR sounds like an awesome concept and sounds good. But to your point, I can't imagine the number of people that are going to get motion sickness and be hacking stuff up midway through that game, because I got motion sickness a couple times with a standard game, and people that were watching it could not watch Doom if they were not playing the game. So that'd be kind of interesting to see how crazy it gets. With Fallout, I've said a couple times that the Fallout 4, the standard version, wasn't exactly pushing hardware very hard. To me, it was just a nicer Fallout 3 with some newer textures. So that should be a pretty easy transition for them. I think it'll be cool. But to touch on the Bethesda conference in general, I'm kind of with you. I don't understand why they had their own conference on something that really wasn't even a presentation standpoint. Someone came out and spoke, and then they rolled pretty much a video for 35 minutes. There's maybe one or two interruptions of those videos. But other than that, they could have just kind of done what Nintendo does. That they're straight to the fans, release it in a video format, and just showing all their games coming out. I think it could have been that. But for how late we stayed up to watch that, and how much we paid for it at work the next day, I'm not sure if it was worth it in general.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll see that next year out of them. It depends on their lineup, but it wouldn't surprise me. Make a good point about Nintendo. There's no reason Bethesda couldn't have done the same, especially with the fan base that Bethesda games have, right? Between Doom, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Dishonored, there's a lot of hardcore fans there that would absolutely take the information, on a conference more like Nintendo's Nintendo Direct than something like a big E3 production. But they did show two new games that were rumored, of course, and actually I think even leaked ahead of time, but we got to see them extensively, and they both, to me at least, look incredible. And that is Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and Evil Within 2. I am sad to say I didn't play the new Wolfensteins. I've heard nothing but good things about them. I know you loved it, Bert. And then we both played Evil Within. Really kind of creepy, cool new take on like the Japanese horror game. The trailer for Evil Within 2 just looked. It kind of blew me away. It almost had that kind of very mysterious and creepy, almost Death Stranding like trailer. But this game's actually coming sometime soon. um, And Wolfenstein just looks absolutely bonkers. Like it just looks like it's completely out of control the whole time, which is something, from a single player first person shooter, they have to do that, right? Because it doesn't have that hook of multiplayer longevity. So they really have to have a campaign that's exciting to play through, and it looks like it will be. And even better, one thing to mention on both these games, but everything we saw at Bethesda, they confirmed, is every single thing they showed is releasing this year. So I think that's great. We get Wolfenstein on October 27th, and we get Evil Within 2 on October 13th. So 2 weeks apart on two big releases. So what do you think on those two?
Yeah, so kind of like you mentioned, I did play Wolfenstein 1, or I should say not the original Wolfenstein, but the most recent one, and I loved it. I played it through 3 times to get the different endings and everything. It was my favorite shooter until Doom came out. From a single player standpoint, it was kind of fantastic. The trailer was really long, though, so that was kind of the thing. I got, I'm going to say this a few times this conference, but I got trailer fatigue in the trailer that I was watching. I was like, okay, well, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. All right, let's do something else. I don't know if it's the ADD of gamers these days that's kind of taken over, but it looks cool. I want to see more, and I want to see it actually come out and reviewed, and I will be picking it up. I'm not sure if it's a day one for me, but it looks really neat. Evil Within 2 looked amazing to me. It's when we get to our favorite trailer part, it was my favorite trailer from E3. The music was amazing. The way they transitioned to different areas of the trailer was amazing to me. It was almost art from that. And immediately, as you mentioned, I got the Death Stranding vibe, and a lot of people did. But as you mentioned, that one's actually coming out soon. So, and yeah, the one thing that they did mention at the end is everything you saw today is coming out in 2017. So you mentioned it too. I think that's something we need to see more of from E3s, and not just concepts and things like that are coming in 2 to 3 years. So bravo to Bethesda for doing that. However, like I said, I thought their conference was overall pretty weak. We didn't get any, surprises or anything outside of things that was already expected. I think Doom and VR was kind of a surprise. I don't think anybody saw that coming. However, we've played that game to death already. I'm not saying it's doomed, but we'll see how it actually sells, and if it ends up being an amazing selling point for the VR world. But it's a fun game if you haven't played it yet.
Yeah, and then they touched on Quake Champions. Beta's been going, and that's PC only right now, but again, really fast-paced, almost Twitch shooter, taking Quake back to its core, and they highlighted the competitive scene there, so that was pretty neat. They touched on a Skyrim expansion for Elder Scrolls, the card game, Elder Scrolls Legends. So if you're a fan of that game, and the CCG seem to be a big thing right now, so that was neat. They mentioned Dishonored, Death of the Outsider, which originally, as they were showing it, I thought was going to be an expansion to Dishonored 2, but it turns out it's a standalone title that's coming in September. So that's pretty neat as well, if you're a fan of the Dishonored franchise. And then the big one, which we expected and we talked about previously on our pre-E3 special, was Skyrim on the Switch. So we actually got to see it. We got to see it running. There's varying opinions on this. I'm at the point now, especially with my sons playing it nonstop, where I'm kind of Skyrim'd out. I've moved on. I can't play it anymore. I'm kind of worn out on it. But it was cool to see it on the Switch. It was, I think, especially cool for Nintendo fans to see that they had a little Zelda kind of thing in the game where you can have the Zelda Link shield, and Link's armor. So I don't know how extensive that integration is going to be, but that was pretty cool to see as well. And I know that's one you were talking about before E3 as well.
To give you an idea of how long ago Skyrim released, Skyrim released back in 2011. And here we are in 2017, still releasing Skyrim games. So how many times has Skyrim been re-released and everything? And I think it's cool that it's coming to the Switch. Obviously, Switch is a less powerful console than what exists today with PlayStation 4, and even with the new Pro and Xbox One and X coming, it makes it even more weak. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that we're going to get a first-person single-player game that's got a ton of game that I think the Switch is missing. However, I'm not sure if I'm going to buy it. I'm kind of interested in it. I want to see more about it. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm Skyrimmed out of just hearing about Skyrim for the past 7 years. That's coming up. So we'll see. I think it looks cool, and it's cool to see it running finally versus just the concept that came out last year in January.
Yeah. So, and that pretty much covered the Bethesda conference. You know, like we said, they were short and sweet. I give them props for having their games coming out this year. But we'll see what they do next year if they continue to have a full conference just for them. Moving into Monday, we saw Ubisoft early on, and this one was pretty cool. Honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, we kind of knew some of the games we were going to see, right? They announced those ahead of time, but they actually opened with Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I gotta admit, I thought it sounded crazy when the leaks first started, and then I saw it, and I'm probably sold on it. I think it's neat. I think having a strategy game in that vein of a Mario game looks cool. I like that there's different weaponry and strategy and tactics and stuff. So hopefully, if it goes deep enough to hold my interest, I'll be a fan of that. But I thought it was really, really cool to see Miyamoto on stage. He's a gaming legend, and anytime he comes out and talks about something, people just have a big smile on their face, which I did. So I thought that was a neat way to open their conference.
Yeah, Miyamoto coming out was one of my favorite moments of E3. The way he came out, people had no idea he was going to be there. He had his little gun on his hand when he came out, and he gave, gosh, I can't remember the Ubisoft CEO's name, but they've worked together over the years for so long. He gave him one that was kind of a prop for him to have. So I thought that was really cool. And even midway through them talking about it, I kept wondering in my head, I was like, how is this going to work? Is this even cool? Is this weird? Is this strange? And then they started showing the gameplay, and I was like, this is actually done pretty well. And then the more people got to see it at the E3, the more people are liking it. It's been compared to XCOM a lot, and I love the XCOM series. I've played both of them a lot and enjoy both of them. If they do kind of an XCOM light and the consequences of losing your players aren't so consequential like they are on XCOM, this might be something that people love. So we'll see how it looks when it comes out. One of the cool things is that it's coming out in just a couple months. So August 29th, it's right around the corner. It's something that I'm going to definitely be paying close attention to. I may even pick up. So,
yeah, I think so as well. And
that's cool.
The things for the Switch right now, and we both said this, is that just having that portable factor, and being able to play the game almost like incentivizes me to buy a game for it. I was traveling all this week, and sure enough, I was playing Zelda and Mario Kart on the plane. So it's just it's one of those things. If it's a cool game and it has some depth to it, I'll definitely be picking it up. So then we got to see more of Assassin's Creed Origins. We haven't really talked about this yet. I am not a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I've only played a handful of them, but I'm pretty intrigued by this one. It definitely looks like they've put the time into this title to kind of bring Assassin's Creed back into relevance. As we all know, it kind of started to get around Unity. Unity kind of catches the flack for a lot of the problems with Assassin's Creed. They took a year off, and now they're coming back. But I think the mission that we got to see on this one, and the loot and some of the additions they made to it, I think it looks pretty good, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I am an Assassin's Creed fan, but I fully admit that the series and franchise in general has kind of gone off the rails a number of times, even some of the older ones that I wasn't a big fan of. But I've played all of them, including Unity, which was a headache and a half. I actually had some of the glitches happen to me that we're seeing on social media where people's faces were falling apart and stuff. It was super weird. And I waited a while to buy that game too. Black Flag being one of the most recent ones, that was fantastic. And also Syndicate, which was my favorite one of recent time. They've gotten better. And with them taking a year off, I'm hoping that we get kind of just an amazing Assassin's Creed experience. It kind of makes almost sense for them to go to Egypt. At some point it had to happen. It's been talked about a number of times that they should have gone to Egypt. And so we have it here. It's coming out this year. I believe it's late October that we're expecting it. And there have been some conversations as to what are going to be the resolution and frame rates and stuff. They haven't really been completely clear as to what the One X and the Pro are going to get when it comes to support. I believe some of the trailers that they were showing were not exactly native 4K, and they got some flack for that. So that's not on Microsoft or Sony. It's kind of what's coming from Ubi on that, and we'll kind of see more as it gets closer. But I hope it looks as good and plays as well as has been mentioned.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I guess we'll see. The Crew 2 was shown for the first time, kind of a big trailer for it, which was interesting. And we touched on this prior, but I wasn't a big fan of the original Crew. But this one, again, looks kind of interesting. There seems like they're adding all sorts of different vehicles and what appears to be a large world to race in. So from boats and cars and all kinds of stuff. So, with Need for Speed Payback coming, the Crew 2 coming, new Forza, new Project Cars, Gran Turismo, huge year for racing fans. So it'll be interesting to see how this one and Need for Speed Payback, actually differentiate themselves. But if this one's done right and you can race all these different vehicles, off-road, on-road, on water, and you can do that in co-op and with friends, and there's some, longevity to how you can kind of either level up or progress in the game, I think it could be really cool.
Yeah, we've touched on the Crew 1 before numerous times. In launch form, when that came out, we were just scratching our heads as what this is really coming out from them. And then from what I understood, they'd made a lot of fixes to the game throughout the game's life, and in the form it is now, it's actually pretty fun and playable. I just don't have the time to go back to Crew 1. However, Crew 2, when it first started, I wasn't sure what it was because it looked so pretty. The trailer is awesome. When it started in the conference, it looked like it was almost a real city that these guys were racing down. And then all of a sudden, the airplanes and the boats and the track racing. I mean, they showed Indy and F1 type cars and other cars that are found on the touring series. So it's not just your everyday car. So we'll see how this actually looks from it launches. I want to see what the lineup is from the cars, planes, boats. I guess the only thing missing is trains, but yeah. So, but yeah. Anyways, it is what it is. It looks really, really cool. I just want to see more from it. And that's, I believe, early 2018. So still a ways away, but we don't have an official launch date.
Yes. One we do have an official launch date for, and I'm going to let you talk about this one because I think I'm one of the few people in the world who aren't a South Park fan. So go ahead and crucify me for that one. But coming on October 17th, finally, is the South Park Fractured Butthole. So what do you think about seeing more of this finally?
I can't wait. I have it pre-ordered. I'm a day one buyer for it. I love the first one, The Stick of Truth. I actually played it twice. First time I played it when it was on the 360. When it became backwards compatible, I went back and played it again. If you're a South Park fan in any form whatsoever, this is a must-buy for you. These are just amazing games from a story standpoint. The gameplay actually makes sense in how you're playing it. They've made a lot of improvements to the gameplay. As you mentioned, coming out October 17th. I hope that doesn't move again. The release dates of this has changed twice before that. So I think they have everything figured out from gameplay and stuff. And I really cannot wait for this game to come out.
Nice. I think millions of people share the same thoughts. So I think I'm just the odd one out on that. The other one we knew about, of course, big controversial title for whatever reason, is Far Cry 5. So we got to see a lot more of that. Again, it's similar, like I said, about Wolfenstein. It looks bonkers. I love it. I think it's going to be a blast to play. I hope they do add some kind of new wrinkles to the title rather than the traditional Far Cry formula. But I think just given the setting and the craziness and everything being so over the top, I'll probably buy and just, play it purely for fun. So I thought it was cool that we got to see more of that.
Yeah, I enjoyed Far Cry 5 stuff quite a bit. Before E3, we had only seen the trailer. We got to see some actual gameplay this time, and it looks really, really good. The graphics look good. The frames per second were running really smooth. It was kind of funny to see that one of the characters is a dog, and they'll be keeping you company, and it looks really cool. So I hope exactly what you're saying. It's not the same formula of the tedious, repetitive missions over and over, just in a different area. I hope they add some crazy stuff in the content as far as story and where it's taking place. It interests me. It looks fun. So you're not going to get any hate from me on that one.
One of the big surprises that didn't leak ahead of time was Skull and Bones. So this is a kind of pirate title that Ubisoft said that they've been working on for a few years now, and I believe with some of the development team behind AC Black Flag, some of the people who worked on the kind of ship combat in that game. So this looks really interesting. Like I said, I didn't expect it. Between this and Sea of Thieves, we have two kind of large pirate titles that take a very different approach, to the game. And I don't know. I think it could be a lot of fun based on what I saw.
Yeah, when we were talking about Sea of Thieves, I mentioned a more mature title compared to Sea Thieves, and Skull and Bones is actually the title I was talking about. It looks really cool. I loved you. You mentioned you didn't play a lot of Assassin's Creed games. I'm not sure if you ever touched Black Flag, but Black Flag's biggest highlight outside of the story and the island hopping that you could do was the ship combat. It was the best in the series. A lot of people were hoping that it would have it, and so the team has mentioned a lot of the team members from that are working on this one. The trailer did not disappoint in any form whatsoever. It looks really cool, a lot of detail. They did mention how it was multiplayer as well, and you could kind of go in with your friends with different tasks on the ship. So if you're a pirates type guy and enjoy that kind of stuff, this game is for you. It looks really cool. And I'm actually looking forward to it. I may actually pick it up at launch if it continues to have some of the content that they're saying it's going to have. So I believe fall 2018 is what we're looking at for that one, though, so it's still a ways away.
Yeah, that one's still a ways out, which is fine. Honestly, we have more games that we can play anyway. But Black Flag is one of the Assassin's Creed I did play, and I loved. One of my favorite parts on that was when you get on the boat and you're just kind of sailing around, and your crew just starts singing the shanties. I think everyone kind of loved that. So I'm sure that'll be a big part of Skull and Bones as well. And then there's probably an announcement here that I know you don't care about, so we can probably just skip right over it. But they they ended with one of the biggest surprises, of E3 overall, and that is Beyond Good and Evil 2. So it is actually coming. So again, I'll let you touch on that one.
Yeah, thank you. So for me, this was a mic drop moment from Ubi. And it was at the end, and it was kind of funny how emotional of a response it got from a lot of people. There was people that actually screamed up and yelled in the crowd. Some of the editors from well-known sites all mentioned them, IGN, GameSpot. They immediately were talking about they were screaming and going crazy about this. So it does have a different take. It is supposed to be a prequel to what happened in Beyond Good and Evil 1. It's not a sequel in the sense to where it follows up what happened with Jade. But the trailer looked amazing. And the original developer came out and mentioned this has been 15 years in the making. So to kind of give you an idea as to how long it's been in the works, one of the things I found interesting is that it is a completely different take on what was worked on and shown at previous E3s years ago. So it makes me wonder if they literally scrapped everything they had before and kind of are working on something entirely new. One of the negatives from it is we have no idea when it's releasing. There was none mentioned. There's not even a hint to it. 2019 was not mentioned or anything. And some of the people have actually mentioned this is going to be a next-gen game. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it releases during the PS4 and Xbox One cycle. But from what people have said in some private backroom videos that they had seen at E3 that only certain people were invited to, they say that it looks just mind-blowing as to how beautiful it looks. So we'll see what happens. I was extremely excited. This is tied for one of my biggest surprises and most excited things for E3 of 2017. To say I'm excited is an understatement. So can't wait to see more.
Excellent. So then we moved into Monday, which Sony was the the main conference on Monday evening. Excuse me. They kind of kicked it off in a unique fashion. People wondered how Sony would follow up to last year. So last year's conference for Sony got a lot of positive press, as it usually does. But last year in particular, for showing a whole bunch of new things, that people didn't expect, which is great. They did catch some flack, and I agree with it in the sense that they showed a bunch of things that didn't have release dates and things that may not even be coming for years yet. And we kind of touched on that before. So the question for this year was, are they going to do that again? Or are they going to kind of show an update to most of these games and hopefully give us some release dates finally? So they did closer to the latter. We actually didn't get any really large surprises or announcements at Sony's conference. They didn't show a massive amount of games. But we did get a couple release dates, but we're still lacking release dates for a surprising number of games as well. So I don't know. We'll kind of go through the games here and talk about it. But, the first one was Uncharted Lost Legacy. So we already knew that was coming on August 22nd, excuse me. I think it looks great. I'm really excited to play it. Uncharted is one of my favorite series. and that's a day one buy for me, of course. But yeah, especially for $40, and they kind of reiterated the fact that this is a full-length game, so it could be 8 to 10 to 12 hours of a single-player campaign. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I just want to start out by saying the E3 Sony conference this year was one of the weirdest conferences I've ever seen. They had like live entertainment with split screen of the trailer, which is really strange. For Lost Legacy, where we've only touched on that one so far, they had some people coming out playing the instruments that are related to the game before the trailer even started, and you could see in the crowd people were like, "What the heck is going on?" And then they did a lot of weird things with lighting. So some of the games that had water in them and stuff, the lighting at the conference was kind of would change to blue, and you would hear sound effects going on all over the place. For being Sony in this powerhouse, I was not a fan of the presentation that was shown. And the biggest thing I could say about this conference is trailer fatigue. I was exhausted watching trailer after trailer after trailer after trailer. And while some people love it and they're going to think Sony's the best thing all the time, I grew extremely bored throughout the conference, and there was some big titles. You mentioned there was not many surprises. There was one kind of a surprise, and it was the Shadow of the Colossus remake, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But that we had guessed that was going to be one of the things coming just based on leaks that were around the web. So they had trademarked the name Shadow of Colossus. But every other game we knew was coming. We got to see more on some stuff, which was neat, but there was not really any surprises. Zero mic drop moments, zero crowd going crazy moments. You could actually see the fatigue in the crowd, not just at home for people that were watching it at home. One thing that I do want to touch on before move on to other stuff is Sony released a lot of the games that we were wanting to see at the conference trailers before the conference started. So things like Knack 2, Gran Turismo Sport was not even mentioned in the conference, and these are some of their biggest first-party software titles that people had been kind of waiting for and to see more on. Ace Combat was another one where we got a trailer before that, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but from a Sony perspective, Ace Combat is a massive franchise for them, and it sells really well around the world. So kind of a weird take on E3 for Sony this year. They're not my worst conference of this year, but they're nowhere near the top when it comes to their content. So I'll kick it back to you on other stuff mentioned, but I was kind of taken aside by just their decisions this time. I don't know if they just decided to go on super cruise control just because they want to stick to, hey, we're the place to play all the games, but it was really strange for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was kind of strange, and you could, as you said, you could see it in the crowd. And I know there's some big threads on Reddit and some other places that were kind of the same way, like almost shocked disappointment. Like they always expect so much out of Sony, and they came away this year like not really sure what that was. But regardless of that, you already touched on it, so we'll just touch on the games that they showed. And again, most of these aren't surprises, but it's cool to get to see them. So we got Uncharted coming. We got to see the Frozen Wilds DLC for Horizon Zero Dawn. Probably I would say second favorite game so far this year, only behind Prey. I platinumed the game, love it to death. I'll be buying the DLC on day one when it comes out, and they said it's going to be only $15 as well, so I think that's pretty cool. One of the big titles we saw last year, and we got to see again this year, a little more of it, is Days Gone. So that's Ben's studio, and that's the big title that I had actually predicted was coming this year. But again, there's no release date for the title, no confirmed release date. I don't know what to think of this one. I was kind of 50-50 on the trailer. I thought, some of it looks really cool, and then some of it looks kind of we've kind of seen this before. So I think it'll take more seeing what the gameplay elements are, hooks are, what type of systems they have layered into the world before I know if I'm going to love it or not. So I don't know. What do you think about those two?
Yeah, so I think you misspelled Prey with Zelda. I think that was your number one game of the year. So I'm not sure, but I think I misheard you there.
Yeah, I mean, they sound similar, so that happens.
Horizon Zero Dawn, we've talked about the DLC that we were hoping was coming for the game. I think the developer announced that they were working on DLC, so it's cool to see it. We both love Horizon Zero Dawn. It's both in our top 3 games of the year. My wife is actually still playing it, and she moves a lot slower through the game, but it just looks beautiful, and I can't wait to play more of it. Days Gone, I'm still not really sold on the game. It looks like another Uncharted clone for me, but with zombies this time. While watching them play more of the actual gameplay versus kind of the tech demo they had last year, immediately I was thinking, wow, that could be Nathan Drake right there, just running through the forest or whatever. And the graphics look very similar. And like I said, I'm kind of zombied out. So it looks cool. I hope to see more. I'm not sold on it as of yet. And kind of the point to the release on it, I can't see another 2018 E3 where they show Days Gone again. I mentioned that in our prediction stuff, to where Sony has been showing the same games over and over at a lot of their E3s, and I'm thinking it's going to be a spring 2018 release. I hope it does. If not, people are going to get kind of sick and tired of seeing the same thing over and over. But we'll see. I mean, Sony sells games no matter what, so we'll see what happens.
Then we had a couple other big titles, of course. So Shadow of the Colossus you mentioned, and Sony did say that's a complete remake. It's not just a simple remaster. So those games have again like a cult-like following, a group of people that just adore them. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's more of a fan service type thing, which is neat. God of War is obviously one of the huge titles. We got to see more of it. It was a weird mix though, as I watched it live, and then when I went back and watched it again, the God of War specifically, I noticed that there was a lot of almost trailer-esque moments, movie-like moments, and then they slightly mixed in some gameplay. So I don't know if what we saw was real time, like the trailer piece. I didn't actually look that up or research that, or if Sony said that. So I don't know if that was just a trailer or if that's actually what we're expecting in the game transitioning into gameplay. The gameplay itself, I don't know. God of War's always been really over-the-top action game, violent and fast and everything, and it looked to be in that same vein, but it wasn't overly impressive. There was nothing that really jumped out to me about the gameplay they showed briefly. So we'll see. I have full faith that game's going to be amazing. But again, no release date on that one either. I think that's another spring 2018 title. Is that right?
They did mention early 2018, so definitely nothing official from them as far as a release date yet.
Okay, so another early 2018 title. And then, other than God of War, they also touched on some VR stuff, which we kind of predicted prior to the show. They did take time to touch on VR. They spent actually a decent amount of time on VR, which, I think is good. It's the one piece of hardware I don't own, but it's nice to see Sony at least kind of, put some more effort into it. They're not going to let it fade away like the Vita did, sadly. So it was good to see some new titles. Here we go with Skyrim again, Skyrim VR. And I think that was expected, or maybe some people were looking at it as a big announcement. Meanwhile, I was, like I said earlier, I'm Skyrim'd out. So I was like, whatever. They showed The Inpatient, which looked like a creepy kind of maybe psychological VR title. That interested me a lot more than Skyrim did. So it was just good to see them, kind of come back to VR and reinforce their stance behind PSVR.
Yeah, so I'll mention VR really quick. I was actually kind of surprised at how much they spent on VR. I think they spent close to 10 to 15 minutes on their VR titles. And when we were talking about predictions and our thoughts towards what Sony may do, we were kind of unsure if they were going to spend more time on VR. The weird thing about the VR titles is almost none of them had release dates. So we have no idea when these games are coming out. And a lot of it was concepts. There weren't actual gameplay of what it could be. There was one they brought out that was extremely strange to me. I believe it was The Impatient, which had Elijah Wood. And there was maybe 3 to 5 seconds of actual gameplay of the VR game. A lot of the other stuff that was shown there was full motion video. Not full motion video, but actual video of them talking about the game. So to me, that was kind of strange. We didn't get any big titles. There was one really, really, really strange VR title, and it was the Final Fantasy fishing game for VR. A lot of people were like, what the hell is going on with what they have? So to kind of give you some background, that fishing game exists in the Final Fantasy 15 game, but not in a VR perspective. It's just a little side game that you can play here and there. For them to turn it into a full-blown VR game, scratching my head is the smallest thing that I can kind of tell you about. So we're still not seeing any AAA VR games from PlayStation coming out. And as I mentioned earlier, Skyrim came out in 2011. So if this game comes out in 2018 or even 2019, whenever it decides to come out, we're looking at a game that's 8 years old coming out on VR with a few remasters. So it's kind of weird. I don't know how long you can push Skyrim and Fallout games on any of these consoles. So not specific to just Sony, but on Switch and stuff. So it's going to get old after a while. Then we'll see how long that takes. Really quick on God of War before we move on. I did hear the developer mention that they are trying to have more of a cinematic experience without HUDs. So we'll kind of see if that's what we saw from God of War. Once again, this game has now been shown twice for the last 2 years. We'll see if we see it again at the 2018 E3 or if it comes out prior to that. But yeah, some of the stuff that were mentioned is when you look at some of the weapons when he's fighting with, you're supposed to be able to see kind of the strength of that, or if it's going to break soon, or if it's going to hold, or the strength of that weapon in the frame when you're playing the game. So to your point, I'm not sure if what we saw was all gameplay, which you're going to be seeing live in the moment, or if it had some gameplay mixed with some cinematics mixed in there. God of War does have a lot of quick time events, so we'll see if that kind of continues, and if they had taken out the HUD for those quick time events, or what was happening. But I have a feeling that's what happened. They've removed those things, and there will be a HUD, but not as big as it existed in the past. So it looks great, though. I mean, I'm interested. I will probably be buying it day one.
Great. And then two other big exclusives that we knew about, of course, were Detroit Become Human and Spider-Man. So Detroit Become Human, I was actually really interested by going into the conference. I think I mentioned it as one of my most anticipated titles for the Sony conference. And they gave us a 5 or 6 minute gameplay demo, and sadly, I'm now less interested. So I don't know why it didn't really strike me as anything interesting. We got a good look at it. I just found the original trailer from last year to be a lot more intriguing than what we saw out of the actual gameplay or the actual mission that they showed this year. So I don't know. I hope it turns out well. I'm still going to be following it closely, but I'm not too fascinated or interested in what I saw in terms of gameplay from that demo. And then they ended the conference with Spider-Man. It was a big production for them. They did a lengthy kind of gameplay demo. And this is a title, I'm not a huge comic book guy. Those games, they don't interest me because they're comic books. They have to be good games. And I wasn't too interested in Spider-Man going into the show, though I know many are. But now I'm actually more interested in that. So I'm less interested in Detroit, more interested in Spider-Man. I thought the gameplay looked like a lot of fun. It had some quick time events in the big scene at the end, the big kind of chase scene, but that's not a big deal at all. It almost looked like something out of Uncharted, where you have those huge grandiose scenes, which I love. And just swinging around the city and some of the other things looked really cool. Insomniac, I believe, has come out and said, the base of what they did, some of what they did in Sunset Overdrive in terms of the traversal and everything, they're putting to play in Spider-Man, and it looks like it's going to be just a blast. So I thought that was pretty cool. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat when it comes to Detroit. This is another trailer where the trailer was too long, and I got exhausted watching the trailer. And so one of the things historically about this is they were kind of showing different characters in the game that you're going to play. So this is another character from Detroit Become Human. I think it looks cool, but one of the things that I noticed watching it is the facial animations are looking dated already, and the game hasn't released yet. Funny enough, with games like Injustice 2 that have come out, and we've been kind of spoiled with some amazing facial animations, this game kind of rides on its facial animations, and things have to be really, really good from that standpoint. And watching this, I was like, wow, they don't look anything lifelike whatsoever. Now, they are supposed to be androids, obviously, but I thought it was really strange that it looked worse than some of the games that exist already. At the same time, I was not a huge fan of Beyond Two Souls and Heavy Rain, so I might be the wrong person to be asking about that. I own both of them. I tried to play both of them a number of times, and I couldn't get through either one of those. Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, I got further on than I did in Heavy Rain, but I don't know what it is. I can't get into these games, and I'm curious if this one's going to change it for me. Spider-Man, I think looks amazing. I am a comic book guy, as you can probably see in the background. However, I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan, but all the Spider-Man games that have come out have been either hit or miss. And this one does look good. And watching the trailer, the two games that I compared it to the most were the Arkham series and Uncharted. So if they have that in there with a great Spider-Man story, you've got me. I will be buying that right away, and I can't wait for it to come out. I want to see more. So we'll see what happens from them. I think from Detroit Become Human, kind of a downside on that one is we again don't have a release date. So that game has been talked about for over 4 years now, and we still don't have a release date. Spider-Man has a release date of 2018. So going back to our trivial questions that we were asking, some of us thought it was going to come out near the movie release. It's not. So it's way after 2017 is what we're looking at. So 2018, we don't have a release date. We'll see when it actually comes out.
Yeah, I was going to kind of close the conversation on Sony with that, is that, everything we guessed around release dates and expectations of this E3 showing more content and finally saying, all right, here's when some of these games are coming. We still didn't really get. We don't have any confirmed release date for Detroit, Spider-Man, God of War, Days Gone, none of these. And in fact, I believe most of those they said are 2018. So it looks like they'll have either a big spring or big 2018. But in terms of later this year, we have Uncharted coming in August, and we know that the Frozen Wilds expansion for Horizon is supposedly coming later this year. But it might make a little more sense, or it might have shown the light on why Sony made so many marketing deals for this year, with Call of Duty and Star Wars Battlefront and Destiny. Thank you. Because it doesn't look like from their side, from their publishing studios, they have a lot coming later this year. So that maybe that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, the Sony conference, I don't know, found it weird. I forget the name of the guy, the head that came out there after they showed all these trailers, and he spoke just before Spider-Man played, and he came out and he said, "Woof." He said something to the effect of, need to calm down after all that gameplay, and the crowd barely even reacted. They did, it was just everyone just kind of sitting there. So like you said, it was very strange. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm. Some of the games look great. I know Spider-Man is one of the titles that's like at the top of a lot of the press's awards, up there with Anthem and a few others. So I thought Spider-Man looked great. God of War looks cool. But there wasn't a whole lot that really blew me away. The Monster Hunter World came out, or the trailer I said was shown, but they've confirmed that's not exclusive. That's coming to Xbox as well, but it was cool to see it. I've never gotten big into those games, but I may try that one. But one thing just before closing, and it kind of goes back to your point on how people view Sony conferences E3. There's a publication, I'm not going to mention it by name, but I was watching their reactions to the E3 conferences, and they went through the Microsoft one as an example, and they were like, wow, a lot of games, and they were surprised, and it was kind of tepid excitement. They got to the Sony conference, and the same two guys or similar guys reacting to it, and they showed, it was about 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, and they showed the Monster Hunter World game, and the guy said, in my book, Sony's already won. And I'm thinking you've seen two games. You're looking at a trailer that's not an exclusive. It's just a game that's coming to both Xbox and PlayStation. And before the conference is even a third of the way over, you're saying Sony's won. So I thought that that comment was kind of telling. There is, whether or not you believe it or not, I believe that there's definitely some weird thoughts around E3 and some. I don't want to really use the word bias. I guess you could, but towards Sony. But this year, I definitely thought that they kind of dropped the ball a little bit.
I'll use the word bias. I have a whole article on it on our site. Yeah. So one thing I do want to mention, you mentioned that we're not sure what's coming from Sony. So this is kind of what I alluded to earlier in the conversation, was a lot of games they released trailers for before the conference started. So some of the games coming out in the fall are Gran Turismo Sport, and get this, Knack 2. I'm sure we can't wait to play that one, right?
I feel bad for that game. It's become such a joke, and I love platformers, so I'm hoping Knack 2 is good, but just the name alone almost drives a laughter response from a lot of people, which it shouldn't. But I think that game's got to prove itself, so we'll see.
Yeah, so one thing I want to mention before we leave off on Sony, and I'm not beating them up too much, this is more of a Gran Turismo beat up. So to kind of give you an idea of what you're getting from Gran Turismo after, gosh, how many years of development has it been from Polyphony? It's been a while, and this is their first release on the PlayStation 4, and we've had the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One since 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2013.
So here's what you're getting at launch, guys. You're getting 140 cars and 15 tracks. To compare to Forza, or even Project Cars, it's kind of a joke. And they have mentioned that they're going to have day and night lighting. It's still to be determined if we're going to have any car damage like we have in other racers. And if you notice, I'm not even mentioning Forza here as even though that's their direct competitor, but we've seen a lot of other car racing games enter the racing realm since all these other games have kind of taken off. They have all that. So I do know that there's a huge fanboy battle between Forza and Gran Turismo. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to say I'll probably pick up Gran Turismo. I'm not sure how fast I'll pick it up. It is getting full 4K and HDR support, so that's pretty nice to hear. And it is coming in the fall. So I think the content's kind of light on it, and I'm probably going to catch some flack on it for whatever reason. Digital Foundry has done a lot of research on, what is the new stuff that we're getting from Gran Turismo that we didn't get from Gran Turismo 6, which released on PS3. And I just encourage you to watch that video. The results are telling. And it is what it is when it comes to Polyphony Digital. They take a while to develop games. I just hope that everybody's happy with what they release. So with that, I'll leave off on Sony. Like I said, I thought their presentation was extremely weird. The live stage content with what's going on the stage was really weird to me. I don't know what that does for people that are at home, aside from the few thousands that were at the conference. Good for them. The rest of us, we're kind of just scratching our heads through a lot of it. Once again, not the worst conference, but definitely nowhere near the top.
Yeah, and on Gran Turismo in particular, not Sony, but I was going to say I'll back you up. I'm been outspoken on Gran Turismo since about Title 4. Title 4 on PlayStation 2 was a big thing, and since then they've fallen into irrelevance. I mean, they're not in the game anymore, as far as I'm concerned. It's not one of the top racing titles. I wouldn't even say it's, from what I've seen out of Project Cars 2. That's coming out later this year, and the development that's gone into that, and some of the behavior in the cars and everything. Unless Gran Turismo shows me something impressive, I would say that Project Cars is a much smaller studio, from what I understand, has already surpassed GT. It's not, in my book, it's not even a competition. I think that's true. If you talk to car guys online, guys who actually are into cars, who actually race, Forza's been the title for a while, and they have a huge development force. They work with all kinds of manufacturers. We saw the Porsche announcement. They worked with Pirelli on tire, on Forza 6 on the tire modeling, and it's a different world nowadays. Gran Turismo 1 and 2, I think all of us as car guys will fondly remember forever because they changed the game, but they're not relevant anymore. So. And GT Sport, everyone thought maybe that's the game that makes them relevant in the car racing genre again. From what you just, from what we've seen and you just explained, I don't think it is. So anyway, we'll move on. Nintendo. So Nintendo, had Nintendo Direct, not one of the major conferences, but they showed some really good stuff. As we kind of commented, Switch has a promising future, and I think they reinforced that between showing Mario Rabbids battle at Ubisoft's conference, and then we finally got to see the big one, right? Super Mario Odyssey. So it's getting a lot of positivity, a lot of positive press on it. I'm impressed. It's the game I bought a Switch for, which I already talked about. It's simple. I can't wait. It's coming this year, October 27th. I'll be there day one. I'll probably even take a day or two off of work to play, just to get into it a little bit. So I can't wait for it.
Yeah, so Nintendo, obviously not the same conference format as the rest of the ones. They goes directly to I think they even call it Nintendo Direct, to the consumers. And they were my surprise conference of E3 in the sense of the amount of content that they have coming from a first-party standpoint. Now, they get kind of an unfair advantage there because most of their software is only first-party content. But if we go back to our predictions and wants from Nintendo, we thought that they were going to kind of ride on the ARMS and Splatoon 2 ride until Mario releases. And no, we have other software that is actually coming out before then. And the Switch is getting a lot more content than we expected in general before that. So in previous Nintendo Wii and Wii U, the droughts were massive between first-party software releasing and other first-party software. So to kind of give you guys an idea, this is not touched on our article, but obviously you have Mario and Rabbids Kingdom game coming out in August. We have some official release date for Mario is October 27th. So the original release date was December 31st, 2017, and I did mention that's a placeholder for Nintendo. But now we have a official release date coming right around the corner, so that's going to be awesome. They've had tons of gameplay on it already. And one of the things that kind of impresses me is that the game's actually co-op. You can play it with somebody else in the same room, and you can control the Hat and Mario separately. So I thought that was really cool. We're both day one buyers for that. I think we can't wait. And before I bump it back to you on other stuff, one of the things that I was surprised at with Nintendo was they didn't just focus on the Switch. They also talked about handheld titles coming out. So as we kind of know or don't know, the handheld market for Nintendo, they are number one by far when it comes to handheld units sold. And they are not abandoning that. And they didn't really focus too much on the 2DS hardware coming out here in July, but they did support it with a whole bunch of games coming for the actual handheld. So I was really impressed with Nintendo. They are kind of my surprise for E3, even more that their console was under 30 minutes long and they were able to kind of give us so much. So I'll bump it back to you and you can kind of talk about some of the other titles coming out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they showed a lot in the time they had, and they made efficient use of it, which was great. So we got some other kind of big announcements. We saw that Yoshi's coming and Kirby are coming. I don't think we have dates on either of those titles yet, but it's good to see. I'm laughing because when we did the trivia last week and we guessed what character would return for Nintendo, I mentioned, I don't think we'll see Kirby or anything. And I guess Pikmin, and they showed, pretty much every Nintendo character except Pikmin. So I think I failed miserably at that one. But we saw Yoshi and Kirby coming. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, kind of JRPG coming to this platform. We saw Rocket League and Skyrim are making their way to Switch, I think both this year as well. And we saw the expansion pass for Zelda. So we got a date of June 30th for the first expansion pass for Zelda, which is only, about 2 weeks from now. And then they said the second part of the expansion pass will come this year as well. So again, we're looking at great stuff, right? We've got several games there, including the big expansions and big title and Mario coming this year. So I think that's great. Any thoughts on, I know Zelda's your game of the year. Any thoughts on that so far? And that expansion pass or Kirby Yoshi? I think Kirby Yoshi, we don't really know too much about yet, and they were kind of expected if you know Nintendo, but specifically with Zelda. Anything that interests you there?
Yeah, so the content looks cool on Zelda. I've played that game to death already. I'm already at 80 plus hours on it. And the DLC is cool. I need to kind of think about how much it's going to suck me back in just to play the DLC. It's not really any new story content. It's stuff that you can do with the existing game. So if there was more of a story content or maybe a new side mission or something big, then it would probably get me back in there. But I think they waited a little bit too long for that first DLC pack to come out from release, which is kind of a negative for me. But we'll see if I get back to it. I have a massive backlog, so I just need to see if I'm going to come back into it. My other game that I predicted, thankfully, that would be coming is the Metroid. So Metroid Prime 4 is on the way. They did not give any details whatsoever on a release date or when it was even coming. All it said was, let me actually find the exact script of what it said, unless you remember. Here it is, now in development. So we have we have no idea when that's coming.
I think they out-Sony'd Sony on that one.
They did. And the teaser was a 30-second 4 that came, and then Metroid Prime came over it. So that one got a massive fan reaction. People have loved the Prime series, and I think that was the only way they could have gone for a console release. We did get a handheld release, which is a remake of Metroid Prime. Not Metroid Prime, Metroid 2. That was on the Game Boy. So for a game that's
Samus Returns, I think.
Yeah, Samus Returns, correct. Yeah. And people that have played it said it's better than the first one. Obviously, with the tech that exists today compared to the Game Boy days, is going to be cool. But it's cool that they're supporting that. I'm wondering if that's kind of like a test bed to kind of see how much people love Metroid and if Samus returning is a big deal or if it's just kind of a whatever for them. But with every Nintendo release that comes back, I've mentioned it before, there is rabid fans for Nintendo content, and they're just going to eat it up. So let's see. There was a couple other Nintendo surprises, or not surprises, but we saw more stuff on.
Yeah, Sonic Forces was one.
Yeah.
So Sonic Forces, being, I've mentioned this before, but being an old Sega guy, it almost was a stab in the heart a little bit to see Sega publishing their core mascot character as an exclusive title on a Nintendo platform. If you go back to the 90s, it's just hilarious to think about. But no, I mean, I think it's cool, right? And I was even laughing secondarily because in our trivia, our pre-E3 trivia, Jordan jokingly said that we'll see Sonic on Nintendo stage as a mascot that's shown. And sure enough, we got a new Sonic game. So I think you guys just set me up on that one. I don't think that was fair at all. If you knew this was coming, you should have told me ahead of time.
Yeah, so one thing about that is there's actually 2 different Sonic games coming. The other one we've known about is the 2D that's actually going to play in the old school graphics, but it is an entirely new Sonic story and game.
Yeah,
And then there's
Sonic Mania.
Sonic Mania, and then Sonic Forces is a whole new story from a 3D perspective gameplay, so it's different. So just not to confuse the two.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did want to mention is a lot of these games are coming in 2017. So Sonic Forces is holiday 2017. There is Fire Emblem, I believe Warriors is a title that is also holiday 2017, if not fall 2017. Obviously Mario coming. So our prediction of a potential small drought with a lot of ports coming from Wii U was completely wrong. There was not one Wii U port mentioned at E3 from their conference. So that's good news in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't considered or even kind of reflected on us saying that. Yeah, we didn't see Smash Brothers either, did we? So, yeah, it's good. No, I think Nintendo did a good job. They definitely surprised me with, we knew we were going to see Odyssey, but we didn't know what else we would see. So I think the fact that we saw so much in such a little time and with so many things coming this year is cool. Metroid Prime 4 goes without saying. That's a huge announcement. I've been really outspoken before that I don't like companies announcing games, years in advance. I think that's really silly. I will say, however, if you are going to do it, don't give me like a 5 or 10 minute trailer that may have nothing to do with what the game's going to be in 3 years' time. Just this simple kind of Metroid Prime 4. It's in development. I thought was at least better than that. So pretty cool. I'm pretty happy. Really looking forward to Mario. I'll keep saying it. But yeah, I think they did a good job.
Cool. Well, that's our bulk of the shows of us going through each one of them. We're going kind of long today, so I wanted to go through some kind of quick fire questions as to what we thought were our favorite things from E3 in general. So the first one I want to talk about is, what is your favorite announcement / game from E3? Let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, couple come to mind, but because there was no Halo or Gears content shown, which is kind of crazy in its own right? A Microsoft E3 with no Halo, no Gears. But I have to say Anthem. Anthem just blew me away. BioWare is that studio that did the Mass Effect trilogy is amazing. The writer of Mass Effect 1 and 2 is actually writing the story for that game. So I don't think it's going to be like Destiny, where it's just core gameplay and the story was kind of eh. I think that's going to be amazing. You?
I'm actually with you as well. Anthem blew me away. I think with me not loving Destiny and wishing Mass Effect was better, we're kind of getting this out of that, being that this is kind of a competitor to Destiny. So I'm with you on Anthem altogether. I think it looks awesome. I think it's still a ways away, so we need to see more on it. But from E3, as far as an announcement goes, that's my #1 announcement. There's a Metroid Prime 4 was close, but being that we know nothing about it aside from a 4 fading in, I can't have that as my #1. All right, next question. What is your least favorite thing and overall things that you were kind of unimpressed with when it comes to E3?
Yeah, I think we kind of just touched on it, but I was hoping to get at least Spider-Man and or Days Gone, or at least 1 or 2 of the big Sony exclusives this year, and not having any coming this year outside of Uncharted, which we already knew, seems odd to me. So that was disappointing, and I was, like I said, I was disappointed with the demo of Detroit. I was really looking forward to that game. I thought it was going to be really, really cool. And after seeing that gameplay demo, I'm not impressed at all. They're going to have to show me something else for me to kind of regain interest in that game.
Yeah, mine would actually be the old content that continues to be recycled. Skyrim's a good example. Fallout's a good example. And I think another thing is there were some developers and some console conferences that went on cruise control in general that I was kind of unimpressed with. So it's kind of a general statement versus overall. So that's my least thing. Okay, so this is next question. What is your favorite conference and why? So this isn't exactly who won E3. I think we want to kind of stay away from labeling someone won it. But what was your favorite one? Which one did you have the most fun with?
Yeah, you can't win E3. I always thought, those are clickbait titles. I hate that nonsense. So my favorite, I have to say Microsoft just because of hardware. I buy all the new hardware. I'm one of those people that's been asking for years for either Sony or Microsoft to make a console that's as powerful as a mid to high level PC, even if it has to be more expensive. I was willing to pay $600-700 for a console. I don't mind because you'll spend $1,500 on a good gaming PC. So a $600 console that can, have plug and play capability with that type of power. The fact that Xbox One X is being heavily touted by developers. The more E3 this week went on, we heard from more and more developers saying this thing is amazing, and it's $499. Give me a break. I love it. Combined with all the games they showed, they showed all the big ones we expected. They had Anthem on their stage, but then they also showed a whole bunch of mix of titles like indies and other little things, Ori and Deep Rock Galactic and a whole bunch of others I'm going to forget right now. But I just thought that the breadth of what they showed was far beyond any of the other conferences in terms of the style and different types of games. So that was mine.
Yeah, so I actually have a tie for my favorite ones, and it's Microsoft and Nintendo. Microsoft, we had been waiting so much about the Scorpio, now the One X, and the amount of content that they showed with a mix of different stuff. I like the flow of the overall conference a lot more than the other ones. And the thing I liked about Nintendo, just as much as it was short, they had a ton of content and a surprise of what's coming out for Nintendo Switch and the 2DS and the 3DS for the rest of 2017 going into 2018. So I think they've kind of laid out kind of something that's really hard to do when you're going against Sony and Microsoft. They've kind of found that niche, and then they've done really well. So I like both of those equally for what they brought to the table. Yeah, so kind of going on the thing, what was your least favorite conference and why?
So I think I have a tie on this one. So mine is Sony and Bethesda. Sony for the reasons we already said. It was just a weird setup. It almost felt boring through it. The trailers were too long, like you said, and we didn't really get anything new or I don't know, necessarily hugely exciting. So I think they kind of went so crazy last year with new stuff. They backed themselves into a corner this year. And then Bethesda, like we said, the Bethesda games they showed, especially Evil Within 2 and Wolfenstein 2, look fantastic. Really excited for them. But the conference itself just seemed like a waste of time. They didn't really need to do that.
Yeah, so mine for least is also a tie, and it's actually EA and Bethesda. Bethesda, gosh, it was just kind of weird. And the fact that, like I said, it could have just been a video that they sent us, and we could have just watched all the trailers. And there was only like 1 or 2 games that I was excited about in the entire thing, and there were trailers with very little actual game content. They were just a trailer. And EA just continues to be really weird for me. Everything from opening with a band coming out, and some of it just being nothing but sports. So if you're a big sports guy, you probably loved EA, but I'm not a big sports gaming type of guy. I play a lot of sports in real life, but not that big a deal. And once again, there was only 1 or 2 games from EA that even got me excited, and that was Battlefront. However, we already knew what we were getting, and we kind of have an idea of what it's going to be like after Battlefield 1. So nothing really surprised me. However, it looked cool. So those don't go hand in hand for me as far as an awesome conference. So that's it for least favorite. So what was your biggest surprise? And this is, once again, it's not title based. It's more about like the flow and what do you think about E3 in general?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything too crazy, or maybe I'm forgetting something, but nothing that really per conference jumped out to me. The one thing, I guess you could kind of say it's software related, but it's not a title, is original Xbox backwards compatibility. It's something that fans have been asking for a while. It's kind of been rumored, but only in the sense that people wanted it. Microsoft really never gave any big hints. They actually said it's incredibly hard to do, and there's a small market for it. But the fact that they actually announced it and they're doing it I think was great. Big surprise, and like I said, the crowd went nuts for it.
Yeah, that's actually great. That's a great idea. I didn't even think about that. I should have thought about that. My biggest thing, and was just surprised that is based on social media, is the fact that E3 was open to the public now, and that it was packed. So some people were mentioning that even walking through the conference was tough, and people were just standing and stopping, looking at their phones, and people were getting upset about that. And some of the lines to demo games were just insane. So I'll be curious to see if they cut the number of public tickets down a little less than was this year. It's cool for gamers, but it makes the conference really tough. So that's my biggest surprise, as I didn't know how it was going to go with it being open to them. Okay, so what is your biggest surprise in software? What surprised you the most?
I think from an impressive perspective, I'd say Anthem again. But in terms of like unexpected, I would probably have to say Metroid Prime 4. You had mentioned that you wanted to see it and we're hoping to see it. I just didn't think that that's something Nintendo would be actively working on. So I thought that announcement was really cool. As we said, we have no gameplay, we have no date. It could be years away. But I think in terms of surprises, that's up there. I might say it's a tie with that and Beyond Good and Evil 2. Both of those were just like holy crap moments. So I think those types of announcements are things that I really make E3 for me. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with Beyond Good and Evil 2 and Metroid Prime 4. So some of my favorite series ever were the surprises. I didn't even see those coming. I didn't think Metroid Prime was going to be mentioned. I thought Samus was coming back in some form, but not Metroid Prime 4. So great to hear that. And obviously Beyond Good and Evil 2, a little tear came down when that came up. So I was mega excited. All right, so a couple more questions left. Quick fire on this one. So the game you're most excited for that's coming out in 2017 that was mentioned at E3. So not just in general, but what are you most excited for coming?
Oh man, I don't honestly know. If you there's a few. Do you know yours? Go with yours, and I'll keep thinking if you know what yours is.
Yeah, so I have kind of a three-way tie, which is how excited I am for the fall coming. I have South Park Fractured Butthole, which is, I paired those really close, those last two words. Mario, which I think we're all excited for. We just weren't sure when the release date was coming, so I'm glad they nailed it down on there. And then funny enough, another one that I didn't think I was going to be excited for as much is Forza 7. So I can't wait to play that, to see that, and all the new game modes and stuff coming. So I have a three-way tie, which is probably too much. And there's a ton of other stuff coming out that was finally nailed down for 2017, but that's what I'm most excited for at the moment.
Yeah, so I think Mario is up there for me, if not number one. I probably have a tie as well. I'm really excited about Cuphead, if you couldn't tell. Glad we finally have a release date for that, and I'm really excited, honestly, to play Battlegrounds. I think that given the popularity of that game, how much people rave about it, they did confirm it's the full game, on Xbox One, just like it is on PC. So 100 player, and you can kind of battle royale. I think just how competitive I am. I think that's one, once I start really getting into it, I think that may kind of take over for me. So I'm excited about that. If I had to give one more shout out, it may be Star Wars Battlefront 2. I think the game looks fantastic. I know you and I are getting it. We've got some buddies who are getting it. I think that's going to be a big party game for us. A lot of time on that one. So that's probably what I put out there.
All right, good points there. Yeah, we have some friends that's what excited them the most was Battlefront from E3. Okay, so two more questions. Last one regarding releases. So how about stuff that was coming from 2018 and further on at E3? Did anything jump out at you that you can't wait for? I don't know where you're going, but
yeah, Anthem. Moving on. No, I think we didn't see it at E3, so it can't answer the question. But my most anticipated game of 2018, given the timeline and given what's expected, will be Halo 6. It's me, assuming that Halo 6 is coming next fall, which it probably is. That'll be my number one game far and away. There's nothing that'll touch it. But based on what we saw at E3, it's definitely Anthem. No other game kind of got me so hyped for diving into the world as that did.
Yeah, I got one that'll throw a wrench in I got a couple that'll throw a wrench in your idea there. That little picture you have next to your PC behind you, it wasn't announced or anything at E3, but Red Dead Redemption is gonna steal our times. I'm wondering if that'll take away from our excitement of Anthem, but I doubt it.
Yeah, well, I had forgotten about it, as again, sitting right next to the damn thing. Luckily that's coming in spring. So if all goes well and I had my way, we'll get we'll get that in spring, and Halo 6 and Anthem in the fall. So then I only need 3 games all year. So good to go.
There you go. Yeah, Anthem's mine too. And to throw another wrench in the thing that we just don't know anything about yet, but is teased for 2018, but I think it's going to be 2019 spring, is Last of Us 2. We didn't hear a thing from them at E3. We were kind of hoping we'd see something, maybe another longer trailer. In our biggest dreams, we were hoping for some gameplay, but nothing. So we'll see when that actually comes out.
Yeah, the only thing I did see, that you're right, we didn't see anything at E3. I did see an interview with someone from Naughty Dog, and they said that the team is finishing up Uncharted Lost Legacy. So they're working on Last of Us 2, but the whole team's not working on it yet until they ship Lost Legacy. So just given how big of a title that is for Sony and Naughty Dog, I don't think we see that in 2018. I'll put that flag down right now. That's a 2019 title.
Yeah, I'm guessing, and this isn't a prediction, it's just a simple spring 2019, I think is when we're going to actually see that, if not fall 2019. Okay, so last question is, what was your favorite trailer for overall? So not necessarily your favorite game, but what was just the trailer that you loved the most from the conference?
First one that popped in my head is Anthem again. I thought that was great. I mean, that was more of a gameplay demo. So the last night, really jumped out to me. It's an indie game, but it really took me by surprise. I think if I had to pick one, though, and I'm not even a huge fan of the series, but the Metro trailer was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that just looked fantastic. So I'm likely forgetting one that I love. Those are the things that jump out right away, though.
Yeah, so mine is Evil Within 2.
I'm changing my answer. Yeah, Evil Within, because I told you I'd forget one. Yeah, Evil Within 2's trailer was incredible.
Yeah, I was mind blown, and the way they mixed that song with the 3 different vocals in it, and the way everything flowed together, it was just awesome. Evil Within 2 stole it for me. However, there is a small part of me that wants to do the last night up there. Once again, the music was awesome. The way they floated, the lighting and everything was just great. It's just so short, so it's hard to outdo Evil Within 2 for me.
Yeah. And the Wolfenstein 2 gameplay demo, see, it's not really a trailer again, but that just looked nuts. I think Spider-Man would be up there too. Really enjoyed Spider-Man's finally getting to see that in action.
Yeah, the one thing that was a negative for me on the Wolfenstein one, it was just too long.
Yeah, it was.
I got tired halfway through. I was like, this is cool. I love the game, but I'm over it now.
All right. So anything else you want to mention about E3 before we close out?
No, I just want to mention that hopefully everybody had a good time on it. I know a lot of these things turn into fanboy conversations between all different makers, Nintendo, Microsoft. I just hope that everybody realizes it's what's best for gamers in general. We learned a lot of stuff. We also didn't get a lot of stuff on a lot of games. So hopefully everybody had a good time watching it and following our content if you follow it. So thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The whole, picking a platform and just only following stuff is ridiculous. E3 is great for everyone, gamers in particular. We get all of these companies coming out to show us everything they're working on, and I just love it. I watched every conference. I'll probably watch every conference multiple times. It's great. So, yeah, it's kind of a shame it's over now. I was always looking forward to E3, and it's almost like Christmas comes and goes. But yeah, you can find an overview of each conference on our site, including the official trailers and some little write-ups on our thoughts. We are going to be getting back to our normal schedule on Bitcast here after this week, so you'll see our standard format coming back on the next episode. And then, as we always say, if you like this content, this video, you can find it on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. If you like it, please rate it, subscribe. We don't do it for ads or anything of the like. We just, like to see that people are appreciating it. If there's anything you'd like to see done differently, let us know. And then, as always, check out the site. So some things up there. There's some new editorials are coming, and you can find us on the site or on our Facebook group. That's groups on Facebook, Season Gaming, and it's kind of a mature place to talk about games as well. So if you want to join us on there, please do. As always, you can find Bert and I on Twitter as well. I'm Porsche Power. He's TrebM3, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.